today we are drawing the fingers, and I'm just going to address the thing that everyone's probably asking themselves right now. Why the hell are we looking at fingers specifically and not just hands? And that's simply because sometimes you just want to really zoom in on these things and get an understanding for it. It's always just going to be the small details that enhance your pictures, will make your illustrations look more believable, whether that's cartoony or realistic, and also just be the factor that helps you stand out in front of the others in a crowd of illustrators that you might be competing with, if you're trying to get a job in the field or something like that too, right? So sometimes it's fun just as practice. I mean, you guys can see here my drawing is very sketchy, and I'm not trying to hide that in any way. This is simply just practice. I'm not saying you guys should draw some elegant, beautifully painted and handcrafted and waste a canvas on it finger. We are just practicing fingers and looking at the breakdown of them. So first things first, let's kind of look at an example of illustrative style fingers. So these are examples of hands that have been illustrated by different illustrators, right? I don't have their names. I just found these guys on Pinterest. If you guys do know their names and you want to put them down in the comments below, that'd be awesome. But really just looking at these, what I got these for was the basic shapes that you're seeing. Like I really love, if you look here, we're just seeing things like, you know, he's just thinking about the shape and the circle of the hand. You know, if the finger is bent, how much of it are we seeing? What information do we really need to know? What he's showing with these lines is like the fact that the arm is wrapping around. And he's showing that same thing on the fingers too, where you can see, you know, these lines are all kind of following a consistent curve. And it's really just broken down nice and simply. This guy is a little bit cleaner. He kind of plays more with the like really rounded effect, right? We're not thinking about joints so much for this guy, but you know, he's really playing with that thick and thin taper kind of feeling that you get with the fingers. So like over here especially, you can see this is nice and thick here, and then it just kind of tapers and gets smaller as it goes in, right? Same thing here, it tapers in. And then this one is a little more of like a realism kind of feeling to it, but you can see he still kept the ideas of simplicity, right? We still see, you know, we're not thinking about every joint. We only have one joint of the finger in there. Simple shapes that kind of still express the form. All these things that help us to figure out what we're drawing and how to break down our pictures, right? So we're going to also try to think about this in simple shapes too. So let's go back to that first finger and break it down. So for this, guys, I just used my index finger. One of the best things about drawing fingers or hands, you literally have the best reference you could ever have right in front of you, right? And we all have cell phones and stuff nowadays. So if you do need a complicated hand pose, you can't hold that hand pose, or maybe you can't bend your hand in that way and look at it at the same time, just take a picture of your hand. You know, this is going to be the simplest thing that you can get a reference for, because you can make a reference for whatever you're doing, right? Okay, simple breakdown for what I did here, and then we'll draw it together. Halfway point, right? Top, bottom, and the knuckle is somewhere down. It goes right there in the middle, right? That's where the knuckle part of the hand is. Okay, so we're thinking halfway to that middle knuckle. About. This isn't going to be the proportions on everyone, of course, you know, but this is just how we can break it down. Halfway from here to here is about that second joint, or you can call it the third joint if you're counting the knuckle. And then if you cut that in half, that'll give you about where the bottom of the nail starts, where the nail generates from, right? And goes to the fingertip. And that's your basic breakdown. All I did was I took these lines over, as you can see, and I just kind of drew them on the other. So I have my front, you know, my side, and then my back of the hand. Put an F there for that one. Cool. So let's go ahead and draw these guys together. All right, so I put my reference up there in the corner. And you guys can see when you shrink it down, it looks a lot more like a finger. Fingers just in general are probably not going to look very finger-shaped when they're giant and in front of your face, because that's not just, we just don't really see them like that usually. So if it does look a little funky when you're drawing it big on your paper, don't worry. It's, you know, again, this is just practice. We're just trying to get the dimensions down, and then when it is shrunk to a size like that, it'll look perfect. How to start this? For me, I'm going to start with that one in the middle, and I'm just looking at my finger too. I'm right-handed, so I'm looking at my left finger as a reference. We're just going to start with a straight line because we know our fingers follow a linear shape, right? There's a bone going through the middle of them. Now I'm going to decide my top, my bottom, and then I'm going to try my best to find somewhere in the middle there. And then now we just cut that in half 2 more times, right? So I got to cut this, I got to cut that in half. So now to start this off, all we're going to do is, from my finger's point of view, it's thinner at the top and wider at the bottom. So my taper gets bigger. Unlike that guy, the cartoony one, where he was kind of playing around with the exaggeration of it, he made the fingertips bigger. For me, it's going to be smaller at the top. So I'm going to create my top of my finger, decide how big I want that to be, and then I'm just going to take it down and kind of like creating like a worm shape right now, right? Where it just gets thicker as it goes down to the bottom. Drawing it nice and light, because again, things are going to change. Now from here, we got to acknowledge a few things. One, we have a pretty big knuckle, or not knuckle, but joint right in here. Our knuckle is down here. So what's going to happen here is the skin's going to wrap around that, and it's probably going to show on most people's fingers. And then up at the top, you have your, like, everyone has their own kind of personal fingertip look to them. Mine tends to bump out and then come back in. Okay, that's a little exaggerated, but that's the kind of shape that my finger makes. You can call them ET fingers or whatever you want to call them, but that's the shape that I'm going to draw because that's what I'm looking at, right? So I'm going to go ahead in and draw what I see in front of me. Try to draw your own fingers if you can. Learn to use the references you have around you. So there we go. It's a pretty believable finger shape. You know, I could always play around with this more, make this rounder, make it more square. I know here's where my nail starts. This needs to be on a curve, and it's going to go up, and depending on how long your nail could sit back here behind the point of your finger, or it can come up and go over. It can even come out and go like that. You know, depends on what length your nail is at, right? Let's go ahead and draw in our side finger. All right, if you guys can see, the side finger is a little bit on a curve. I'm still going to draw that straight line though. I might give it like a little curve to it, but again, I can always add this in later. It has one straight side and one curved side. Okay, so that's what we're thinking when we draw this. I'm going to look at the finger that I already drew too, and I can add on those dimensions. So what you get at the top of a finger when you look from the side is you generally have, and you see this really predominantly in the thumb, which we'll get to, but you're going to have a straight side, which is where the nail is, because the nail is creating kind of a straighter, narrower shape. And then the bottom creates almost like a belly shape, right? Because it kind of curves like so. Now for the rest of this though, this is where this side is a little bit more straight down. Okay. And this side goes a little more on a curve. And remember, my fingers personally are thinner at the top, wider at the bottom. So I'm drawing that taper where it's smaller up here, fatter down there, right? Okay, so from this side you can really see all the joint bends too. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in the bump there. You come, and then again, remember there's a great big joint here. So you're going to have kind of a nice big bump there. And then it curves down. Okay. And sorry about the sketchiness again, but really we're just practicing, right? So nail comes in here like so. Nice big belly on that finger. And then you can kind of, if you want to come back and create these as little bumps. Don't go too exaggerated. We don't want to see them like this. That's going to create a different kind of look. Might kind of make them look like a carrot or something. You just want to give them like subtle little bumps in there. Kind of messy, but there's our side finger. And now we'll do our last one, which is going to be our back of the finger. I'm going to steal my lines from over here. Just so you guys know, on the back of the finger, the proportions of where these things hit are going to be a little bit lower. So whereas this would be the middle of the finger from the front side, or you can call this the back side, I guess. I guess that's completely a visual choice there. But the bend or the crease of the finger from this side, the side where you can grab things, is going to actually be just below that line. Okay? So just remember that. The proportions are pretty much the same. Everything's just a little bit below. And that's the only difference, okay? So I'm going to draw my straight line in there. Basically looking for that same shape from the nail side. You can come in, of course, and add in your finger creases. Everyone's fingers are going to have these in really thick or really thin, whatever it might be. But everyone's finger has them because your finger bends. And over time, your skin just creases. And it's been like that ever since you started bending your little fingers as a baby. So there we go. We got our fingers in there. But we can use this formula for all of the fingers. But what about the thumb? All right. So the thumb, pretty much all you guys should be thinking about with the thumb is it kind of resembles a toe in a way. Sorry if that ruins thumbs for you. And also, it only has 2 joints in there. It's going to have the knuckle part, and it's going to have the part where the thumb bends. Other than that, the thumb kind of swivels on a different axis that starts down somewhere by the palm. Okay, which actually, this is my left hand, so it'd be somewhere over here. Okay, so you don't want to be thinking we don't need 1, 2, 3. We just need 2. Other things to consider with the thumb, we have a square shape followed by kind of like a curved cylinder, and that's pretty much it. Don't overcomplicate this when it comes to the front and back side. The side, so people have different sides of their thumbs, right? So this, what I drew is my thumb, and I have what's called a hitchhiker's thumb, so my thumb actually bends back. Some people, they can't actually bend their thumb back, and their thumb is on more of a straight track. So it'd be more something like this, okay? Where it's just straight. Draw your thumb. I'm using my references of what's in front of me and what I have access to. Use your references as well. All right, I have my thumb in front of me, my left thumb. So I'm going to start it the exact same way. Again, there's a joint in there, so I know there has to be some sort of bone structure. From there, I get to decide the top and the bottom. Now, the thing with the thumb is if you're going to do the halfway point, it does not include the knuckle, okay? It's right above the knuckle. If you measure from the knuckle to here, you see how this is a bigger shape than this, right? So it's right above the knuckles where you get the halfway point. And then you just know that the knuckle is right underneath that line, okay? So using that knowledge, I'm going to come in and give myself a halfway here. And I'm going to be thinking about the simple shapes I just mentioned, right? So I have my square shape up top. Totally just going to draw it as a square. And then I know it tapers down below into a curve. And it comes back out. And somewhere over here it meets the rest of my palm and my hand, right? And then here, curves in, comes out, and then it's going to go down the rest of my palm. That way. So I'm kind of holding like a thumbs up in front of myself right now as my reference. Okay? So honestly, this is the basics of a thumb. We could probably call it here, right? All I have to do is halfway this and add in a nice big nail. Something like that. But we can come in and kind of make that a little better. Obviously, this is an organic shape. It's your thumb. Some people do have very actually square thumbs, so maybe what I drew is actually more accurate to your fingers. But for me, my thumbs are a little more rounded around the edges. And then, of course, you have that knuckle joint, so you have some wrinkles in there too, if you'd like to draw those as well. But always remember, there's that joint there, so the skin is wrapping around it. Okay. All right, so now I'm just going to take my line over to here and over to here. We'll try to fit the thumbs on here. And I'm going to draw the back. I'm going to start with the back of the thumb first, okay? Still using my reference of my own thumb. And I'm going to do the same thing, where I'm going to draw that square, a little bit of a tapering square. So what I mean by that is this side is shorter and then it gets wider, okay? That's an exaggeration, but that's what I mean by a tapering square, kind of like a trapezoid shape, if that helps. Okay, I know that there's a curve here. And then again, it's going to come in with that like this. This is where it meets the palm that connects to my my wrist on this side. And then this is the side where it connects to my fingers coming down, something like that. It'll create like a webbing, and then my hand will be somewhere over there. Okay, knowing that the joint is down there, right? You can come in and like further exaggerate this if you want. It's definitely a cartoony thing to kind of give really stumpy square thumbs. So if you're trying to go for that exaggerated cartoony look, that might be what you want. For the most part, this is really it with the back of the thumb because we don't have a nail. So now let's go to the side. So I'm going to put a curved line for this one. And I know up here it's going to curve this way. And what I want ideally is that this section is right under this section. See that? Right there. So ideally when my thumb's done, they'll about line up with each other. It doesn't have to be perfect because I can bend my thumb really far back if I want to, but I'm just trying to think of like a relaxed thumb position for myself. And again, though, we're still following, that's the top of my thumb. It's going to get wider as it goes down. Okay. It's really just going to look like a nice curved shape over here before it meets that joint or knuckle down there. And then on the other side, you have that like muscle, I mean not muscle, you have that belly shape. This is where your hand would go into the rest of the fingers to show you're doing thumbs up. And really important on this one is that you're getting the side of the nail here. So you're not seeing the full nail. The nail's wrapping around to the other side. You can really kind of play in this indent here, something like that. Okay, very messy, sketchy, but again, practice. All right, so in studying the fingers, we need to look at references sometimes. Because like I said, my finger has a different shape. This person's thumb looks way different than my thumb. And these are all really good things to practice. So what we're trying to do though is just trying to zoom in like visually on the fingers. So what do we want to learn from this one, right? I'm kind of thinking what would be good is to learn some of how this finger overlaps with this finger. And these fingers are in a bending motion, right? They're not just straight like we were looking at the proportions. So that's why we're going to look at this and see how can we find these shapes and break them down into simple shapes and maybe not even go any further with them. So I have a couple selections of references here. And what I'm going to do is I'm really just going to go through them and we're going to draw them together. I'll just speed up the video, maybe put a little music on, and we can practice together, guys. Let's do it. right, guys. Well, as always, thanks for watching. I hope this helped. Really, when you're trying to sketch things and you're trying to learn and figure things out, like, draw all over your reference. Don't get scratchy with your art. Don't care so much about this being pristine, perfect, the line quality, all this stuff, because it's literally just about you figuring it out in your head, putting it on the paper, and moving on to the next one. Okay? At the end of the day, the more of these you can knock out, the better you'll get. The longer you spend sitting on one and getting frustrated and more frustrated, and then you throw it away and you never do it again, it's going to stop you from improving, you know? And I know there's going to be those frustration points, but you got to just work through them, you know, throw the paper away, move on to a new one, whatever it is. Just practice, practice, practice. Find hard angles, find a finger coming at you, a finger going away from you, right? These are all realistic things that are going to exist in some sort of illustration that you might want to do someday, or gallery work. We got to practice these things, so that way we can get better. Again, I hope this helped. If you guys have any questions or any suggestions of what I should do for another video, let me know in the comments below. And of course, we'll get to those. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching.